Here is a list of every car that was blessed with a factory-equipped 426 Street HEMI engine. Number 14, Plymouth Roadrunner. Total HEMI cars, 2014. The Roadrunner was introduced in 1968 as Plymouth's no-frills street machine. It lacked luxury and options, but made up for it with crazy available power. The smallest engine offered was the 383 CIV-8, which sealed the Roadrunner's reputation as a budget muscle car. When equipped with the 446-pack or 426 HEMI, it was the fastest B-body ever made. The Roadrunner nameplate is the biggest recipient of the 426 Street HEMI, with over 2,000 cars leaving the factory with one under the hood. As such, it is the least rare HEMI-equipped Mopar, but it's still anything but common. A second-gen 1971 Roadrunner with a matching numbers 426 sold for a cool $500,000 at a Meckham auction in 2023. Number 13, Plymouth GTX, 1,477 cars. The Plymouth GTX was introduced for the 1967 model year as an upscale, high-performance version of the Belvedere. Initially, it shared much of the same sheet metal with the Belvedere and was even called the Belvedere GTX in its first year, but had a different rear fascia, as well as a blacked-out grille. Positioned as the gentleman's muscle car, it only had two engine options, the 440 Super Commando V8 and the 426 Street HEMI V8. While GTX cars were more commonly equipped with 426 HEMI than most other Mopars, they weren't produced in the same numbers overall, and are considered fairly rare. Classic.com, which aggregates auction prices, sets the average value of a GTX from any year, with any engine at $70,973. While that seems like a bargain price, anything in great condition with the 426 Street HEMI is going to cost $300,000 and up. Number 12, Dodge Charger RT. 875 cars. The second-generation Dodge Charger hit showrooms for the 1968 model year, and RT trim was the dedicated performance variant. The radical Coke bottle body style and aggressive stance made it the baddest thing on the road, and the powerful engine options made it one of the fastest. The second-gen Charger was only produced from 1968 to 1970, but is considered the finest example of a classic muscle car. As revered as the second-generation Charger is, a shockingly low number of them ever received a 426 Street HEMI. Conventional wisdom would hold that the defining car of the muscle car era was probably frequently paired with the defining engine of the classic muscle car era, but only 875 Charger RTs were ever HEMI-equipped. Considering how many of them were destroyed in film and television production, it might be one of the rarest Mopars in existence. Number 11, Plymouth Satellite, 850 cars. The Plymouth Satellite was the top trim level of the Belvedere beginning in 1966 and eventually replaced its host nameplate in 1970. The Satellite was supplanted as the performance version of the Belvedere by the GTX, but for one glorious year they left the factory packed with 426 Street HEMI under the hood. For collectors or fans on a budget, the HEMI Satellite may be the most affordable Mopar on the market. There have been some Concours-level convertibles to go for $200,000 or more, but excellent condition versions can be found below the six-digit line. A 1966 Plymouth HEMI Satellite Coupe sold at a Barrett-Jackson auction for $93,500, and another 66 HEMI Satellite went for just $73,700 at Meckham-Kissimmee 2020. Number 10, Plymouth HEMI Cuda, 781 cars. The Plymouth Barracuda holds the distinction of being the first pony car to hit the market, beating the Ford Mustang by 16 days. Of course, those first-gen Barracudas were kind of weird-looking and didn't match the success of the Stang, but Plymouth eventually turned it into a cool ride. When the third generation rolled out for the 1970 model year, it was easily the hottest-looking car and, with the HEMI Cuda trim, a destroyer of quarter miles. For collectors who don't already have a HEMI Cuda, there is very little chance they will ever acquire one, as they are mighty expensive. Ultra-rare convertible versions sell for between $2 million and $3.5 million, making them outside almost everyone's price range. Even the slightly more common hardtop coupes go in the mid to high six digits, which still makes them unaffordable to most. Number 9, Dodge Coronet, 746 cars. Dodge introduced the Coronet in 1949, and over the years it went from luxury land yacht to factory drag car. The fifth-generation Coronet was the first model to come with the 426 Street HEMI option, and 741 customers exercised it in 1967. In 1968, Chrysler decided that only their badged muscle cars could get a HEMI, and a year prior, Dodge limited them to their newly created Coronet RT trim. Despite these rules, 3 Rebel Coronets made it out of the factory with HEMI engines in 1967, and 2 anti-authority models got away with 426s in 1968. Prior to these restrictive policies, the 426 Street HEMI could be ordered with any vehicle on the Coronet platform, meaning it was possible to get one in a station wagon, but sadly, nobody ever went that crazy. Dodge, however, did go a little nuts and put HEMI in 5 4-door Coronets as a bizarre way to publicize the new engine option. Number 8, Plymouth Belvedere. Total HEMI cars, 683. The Plymouth Belvedere is another early enabler for the 426 Street HEMI, which was kicked to the curb in favor of its high-performance trims. In 1966, however, a sweet 425 horsepower, 490 pound-feet of torque, 426 HEMI V8 could be had in any Belvedere, including 4-door sedans and station wagons. Again, it doesn't appear as if anyone opted for those radical combos, but it was definitely on the table. By 1967, HEMI eligibility was shifted to the Satellite and GTX cars, but 6 plain Jane Belvederes managed to get equipped. There are a few 1967 Belvedere Superstock HEMI out there, but those cars are equipped with the race version of the 426. One possibly legit 67 Belvedere Street HEMI sold for $151,200 at a Sotheby's auction, which is a steal given its rarity. But the info and pictures on the website are gone, so it is impossible to confirm. Number 7, Dodge Coronet RT, 633 cars. In 1967, Dodge created the RT, which stands for Road Track, as the performance trim of the Coronet. Maybe because it came standard with the 440 V8, which was already plenty powerful. Not a lot of customers ordered it with the 426 Street HEMI. As such, most of the rarest Mopars are HEMI-equipped Coronet RTs. With only 633 HEMI Coronets produced from 1967 to 1970, they are already rare. But once options like 4-speed transmissions and convertible tops are factored in, they become cars produced in the single digits. A 69 Coronet RT that sold for $687,500 at a Meckham auction is the only documented 69 Coronet convertible HEMI 4-speed. Even rarer is the 1970 Coronet RT convertible that was restored on Graveyard Cars, which is possibly the only one to exist. Number 6, Dodge Charger, 586 cars.
Join the Dodge Rebellion with the Dodge Boys!
Charger, new leader of the Dodge Rebellion. Muscle enough to catch anything on the road. Available with 4 barrels, dual exhaust, V8 power, hideaway headlights, 4 roomy bucket seats.
As amazingly cool as the second-generation Dodge Charger was, the first gen was kind of a dork mobile. With a long, flat hood and huge, bulbous back window, the proportions were off, and it just didn't seem quite right. The back window would lend itself usefully for the HEMI Underglass Exhibition wheel stand drag car, but for an everyday street rod, it wasn't winning any style contests. It did, however, win every red light challenge if it was equipped with a 426 Street HEMI engine. The Charger was among the first crop of Mopars to come available with the 426 HEMI, though there were very few takers, especially in 1967. Due to the lack of desirability for the first-gen Chargers, they are extremely affordable. A restored matching numbers, 67 Charger 426 HEMI 4-speed, sold on Bring a Trailer for a mere $64,000, which is what a second-gen Charger RT with no engine and in currently on fire condition would go for. Number 5, Dodge Super Bee, 441 HEMI-equipped cars. Dodge rolled out the Super Bee in 1968 as their stripped-down muscle machine, much like the Road Runner with Plymouth. Originally, it was based on the Coronet, but with different sheet metal and killer Bumblebee logo decals. When the Coronet was discontinued in 1970, the Super Bee became a no-frills trim for the third-generation Charger, but still had the awesome Bumblebee logo and stripes. Finding a Hemi-equipped Super Bee from any of its 4 production years is nearly impossible, and when they do come up for auction, they are guaranteed to go for low to mid 6 figures. A 1971 Hemi Super Bee is one of the most elusive Mopars ever made. With only 22 examples leaving the factory, there's a good chance that only a handful still exist. 1970 used to be the cutoff year for collectible Mopars. So many 71s were cannibalized to restore older models. It was probably tempting to rip a 426 Street Hemi out of a 71 Super Bee to put in a 70 Charger originally equipped with a 318. Number 4. Dodge Challenger RT, 427 cars. Dodge's last entry into the classic muscle car era was also the best in the Challenger. Introduced in 1970, it shared the E-body platform with the Plymouth Barracuda, though with distinctly different sheet metal. The RT, like the rest of the Mopar lineup that year, was the only version that came available with the 426 Street Hemi. When so equipped, the Challenger RT was the single most badass street machine the world had ever seen, and the stuff of legends. Like its sibling, the Charger RT, the Hemi-powered Challenger, was a movie star, cast as the protagonist in the classic car chase flick Vanishing Point. Like its cousin, the Hemi Cuda, it's one of the most unattainable Mopars there are. As is the case with all Dodge and Plymouth muscle cars, the convertibles are the most expensive, with a 70 RT Hemi fetching $1.43 million at auction recently. The hardtop coupes are a bit easier on the wallet, staring at $500,000, but that's not doable for most budgets. Number 3. Plymouth Superbird, 135 cars. The Superbird was Plymouth's answer to the Dodge Daytona Aero car, meant for NASCAR competition, but sold to the public for homologation purposes. The Superbird was based on the Roadrunner, but with an aerodynamic nose cone and giant rear wing that created a freaky amount of downforce to keep the car glued to the track. Like the Daytona, the Superbird dominated the racing circuit, but didn't have much of a career as NASCAR banned it almost as soon as it started competing. Technically, the ban was on cars that had engines bigger than 302 cubic inches of displacement, and since the Superbird was packing a 426 Hemi, it was done in stock car racing. Number 2. Dodge Daytona, 70 cars. Thanks to the abject failure of the Charger 500 on the NASCAR circuit, the Dodge Daytona was born. Based on the second-gen Charger, the Daytona was a marvel of aerodynamics and a complete spectacle of aesthetics. Like the Superbird, which came after the Daytona, and was a nose-coned, flying-wing aerocar that tore up the professional stock car races and eventually got banned for being too dominant. The Daytona was also subject to NASCAR's homologation rules, requiring that 500 be sold to the public to qualify for competition. Dodge claimed they moved 503, but that number has been questioned, with rumors that many of the VINs actually belonged to Charger RTs. The number of Daytona fitted with the 426 Street Hemi, however, is not disputed as most of the 70 originals still exist today. A Hemi-equipped Daytona is a solid investment, going for over $1 million, with a guarantee that it will never decrease in value. Number 1. Dodge Charger 500, 60 Hemi cars.
What a getaway car. 30 miles an hour in 2.8 seconds. I think it was going 45 miles an hour when we left the line. The clock said 4 seconds flat.
The Dodge Charger 500 was supposed to be the dominant Hemi-power NASCAR racer, but its design left much to be desired, with the front grille causing drag and the body creating lift, neither of which are conducive for the professional oval track. Drivers described the 500 as akin to speeding on ice, and that failure led to the rise of the Daytona and Superbird aero cars. Trying to find an answer to the differences between a 500 and an RT is futile, with the biggest indicator being that one had 500 badging and the other was emblazoned with RT. Regardless, there were only 392 500s ever built, with a paltry 60 being equipped with a 426 Street HEMI. That Hemi-to-volume ratio makes the 500 the most Hemified Mopar of all time, but the low production numbers also make it the rarest. Despite its insane rarity, Hagerty puts a 1969 Concours condition charger 500 Hemi value at just $296,000, nearly $1 million less than an average 69 Hemi Daytona. That's not chump change, but in terms of a super rare 426 Street Hemi-powered Mopar classic, it's a steal.